Okay, next, initiating the mediation. Is there any fear of stigma? Do you worry about appearing weak if you're suggesting a mediation?
I don't. I think in this day and age and with the cost of litigation, that anytime you can resolve a dispute through a formal ADR process or otherwise, it's worth doing. Again, you don't want to waste anyone's time. To Robin's point, I think it's fair that she's not going to walk into a mediation without having some sort of good faith demand. But I have no problem mediating early and trying to resolve something.
Me neither. I feel the same way. I don't feel if I go to the carrier and say, let's try to mediate this, it's a sign of weakness. I think that's not correct. I mean, I just don't feel that way.
I agree. It's got to start from one side or the other. Someone has to suggest mediation. Someone has to propose a mediator. There are certain mediators that I find that a lot of insurers don't like, a lot of policyholders don't like. So you have to get some agreement on who could be a fair mediator for a particular dispute. But who first broaches the topic is usually of no significance.
I think this is a change from the conversation we might have had at a program of this type 20 or even 10 years ago.
I would agree.
I think that's a difference. I think that's a difference. How helpful are contractual obligations to mediate? Do you have those? Do you encounter those?
I encounter them all the time. I would say 90% of my policies require either mediation or arbitration, and it's the policyholder's choice. I find them extremely unhelpful. And the reason I find them unhelpful is if people are forced to be there, then nothing's typically going to get done. I would say I have less than a 5% success rate when there is a requirement to mediate. So I don't like them, and I try to get my policyholders not to put them in, but they're always in there. So I typically have to get through that hurdle to actually have a good mediation.
So, Robin, what about court orders to mediate?
They're even worse. It all depends. Look, I'm a really big believer. It all depends on who you get as the mediator. I think that's the single most important fact. And I will tell you, I've talked to Joe, I've talked to Jim. I mean, a lot of times both sides feel like the mediator's ineffective. And I've been able to agree on mediators. So I find if you get a court order mediation with a magistrate, I rarely am it rarely settles in that situation.
Jim,
That
Joe?
being said, one of the most effective mediators I ever dealt with was a court annex mediation before the Fifth Circuit on a case that was up in appeal. So it depends on who you get.
Yeah.
Jim, what's your view?
Yeah, the mediator is key. To Joe's point, a squirrel, lucky squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, and you can get a good court-annexed mediator, neutral. Personally, for me, I need a mediator who's going to tell me what's wrong with my case, and that's going to be Robin's greatest ally in that case. And too often now, I find mediators just don't do that. And it's, do you know how much this is going to cost to litigate? Yeah, I do. Thank you, but you gotta give me more than that. And we're not afraid to try cases. And so we really need a mediator who will dive into the papers, understand the issues, and educate us as to what our weaknesses are. And I'm sure that's probably true for you too, Robin. Right?
I completely agree. And I'll tell you, one of the most effective mediators that I use gives both sides confidentially questions relating to their case. And those questions typically go right at the weaknesses in your case. And so the clients see it. And one of the things I find frustrating in a mediation is when the mediator won't take a position, won't really cross-examine you in front of your client to show the weaknesses. I think people like Jim, that's what they want to see. I know my clients want to see that. And I will tell you in a number of cases where I've had to litigate, some of these questions that I get are precisely the questions that the federal judge or the trial judge is asking. So I find it very helpful, and I agree. I think it's really important that the mediator be willing to do that.
Joe?
I agree, and I have a feeling Robin and I are thinking about the same mediator, who we will not name, but I can't say enough good things about this mediator. And the feelings about this mediator is not universal among insurers, but those types of probing questions are very, very effective. And he or she doesn't use it in a way to wield a hammer over your head. You know, the questions are put out there, you think about them, there is no right or wrong answer. You're forced to think about the strengths of your case and the weaknesses of your case.
As the saying goes, it's the difference between being subtle and being subtle.
Jeff Kichaven is an independent mediator in private practice. For more information, please call 888-425-2520.